yeah, gun safety first, it's pointed towards me, so it only can hurt me, so that's good, right? So, okay, what I want to talk about today is let's say a basic MAG comparison with some other brands. I'm not gonna cover everything, of course, but there is no perfect magazine out there, and especially with paintball that is true as well. But I just want to show some comparisons and some limitations that the P90 magazines will have compared to some others. But of course, it all depends on what is more important to you. If this is worth it, of course. And I just want to be honest and clear about that, so you don't have overhyped expectations about it and that lead to disappointment. Well, I probably never ever said that this magazine would do this or can do this. Just with everything there are some compromises that you need to make. And you will see that with other magazines as well. Some have a nice feature that's really exclusive. Others have things in common that's really nice, and other brands are really like, no, we don't want that, or we cannot fit that in the design for the budget that it's going out for. Things like that. So first of all, I find it really funny to point out that the P90 magazine is pretty much the size of a TPX magazine. That's just one thing. Of course, to be fair, the TPX magazine is capable of pushing paint up and not just letting it fall out. So there's a clear difference, but it was funny. I was really working off the Airsoft magazine, and then when it was printed, I was picking up TPX magazine and really like, it's pretty much the same size. It's crazy. If you think this is only 12 rounds and this is 28, so it's really a big difference. I do have to point out that with some magazines I got more experience than others. So for, like, let's say this Tactical magazine, I don't have much experience with it. I never played with it, but I did make an adapter for it, and I've seen the reviews back in the days a little bit. And one thing that's really pointing out to me, I thought that like the D-Mags were big, but when you hold a die-mag, it's really big. And that's really something that points out. It's of course really sturdy, and it got a nice feature that got a door that can be closed, so it will take out the paint. That is something that I could not do or even have thought about to do with the P90 magazine. So there is an opening there that stays open. So there's also, when you see me using the magazines in the pouches, I will point the opening of the magazine towards my body. So let's say sand and paint, it cannot be shot straight in and breaking your paint in your magazine and maybe damaging the ball detent, let's say. So that is something right at the bat that is a feature that doesn't have. And like a magazine like the Tactical magazine, it's really easy to open it up without any tools. You can then clean it out. You can just slide this open and then take the spring out and clean it without any tools. And that's a really nice feature. If I would want to do this with this magazine, then I would have to make it also bigger, just to reinforce it in a sense, because it's 3D printed and so many amount of paint in so small width size. That would be a really big challenge. It was already hard enough to do it like that. So that's some payoff you have. You don't have a toolless disassembly, and you don't have the closing door thing. What I personally like with magazines is that when you can just pull the spring down before you load it. I don't think it's even the way how you do it with the die magazines. I'm not sure, because they're, so far I know, no, not really a tool to push it down. Officially, that was also not the case with the MCSD MAGS, but I used to use a stick to pull it down, and then you can drop in the paint by hand. Was no possibility to, practically at least, to speed load it. That's something that I did not like. Also, the seating in the macro was not nice. It can fall out, things like that. But the are lightweight. Mine would be heavier, but not too crazy much. But this is really the extended one. This one would hold 30 rounds, but then it's like 15 and 15, making 30. If you see the other line here, that's a normal size magazine. Then you got the line here, that will be the small one. This one will be 20, 10, 10, and this one was 14, so 7, 7. And that's their magazine. So yeah, this is basically their 2020 model. This one was also like a toolless design. You can open it up without any tools, but in reality you needed a tool to pry this thing open. You needed to be really gentle that you would not break this. So it's kinda, it's toolless, but is it more easy? That's and I am maybe harsh on this one because I really have personal experience on it, and maybe there are also things of the die platform to really bash on that's bad. The only thing I can think of, it's really big, but at the same time you can open it up without any worry that you're gonna break something. You could not be set by this one. The wear and tear is also high. I cannot really speak of my magazine, how bad the wear and tear will be. Then again, there will be people, of course, who say, "Oh, you can just 3D print it." Oh yeah, okay. But I do want to have a reliable platform. But I think for what I've seen at the moment, but there's not much. I've not been playing much with the magazines. It should not be too bad for what I've seen. But yeah, only time can tell about that one. I cannot say it for now. Of course, you can see it sometimes shine. This edition is an open edition, so you got a plastic sheet right here. So you can see pretty much the entire amount of rounds you have when you are shooting. There's of course a benefit that it lays on top of your marker, so you can see on top. If you have a normal macro, yeah, you will be covering it up anyways, the last part, so it's not that useful. But yeah, this is one thing. There's also a model that is closed, so it's let's say more strong, and of course also more, let's say, rain and dust resistant, because it can always go something underneath there. Then if you compare it, let's say, with the TPX 7 round magazine, that one is it's really sturdy first of all, but it's also, you can just do you can compress the spring just by hand, and now you can load it. Are those magazines really easy to speed load? It can be done, but it's kind of tricky in the sense that it depends on the type, how far you have to press that button in. But yeah, you can say there's only one model of this one, so it's not a fair comparison. But there's something to keep in mind, that it is strange. A lot of brands don't really think about the speed loading aspect of the magazines. Well, it's kind of, to me at least, is a big deal. You want to load those things really fast. You want to play MagFed, not loading magazines. That's not the fun part about it. But the fact that you can compress the spring by hand and you don't need any tools is really nice. This magazine doesn't have that feature. There's no hand wheel that you can use your fingers to turn this wheel on. you will be turning for ages if you would do that anyways, but there's also no possibility to do that. So there can be, for some people, be a really bad downside. So it's not like the T15 magazine or the TMC magazine that you can turn it by hand. So there's something to keep in mind. So you always need to be careful that you have your tool or a regular key with you. I did make a loop hole there, so you can make sure that you don't lose it and have it by hand with an elastic or something like that. Or maybe with a clipper, you can clip it off and then do your thing and put it away. But that is something, yeah, that was something, otherwise it would have been on the top or something like that, but then really sticking out. Then it doesn't have the form factor of a P90 magazine, so you get the trouble of it doesn't fit in P90 pouches anymore, so you have specialty pouches needed. And that's something, let's say this one again would need specialty pouches because there are no real, let's say, magazines, or let's say magazines for airsoft that have this size, so you are kind of stuck. Same problem with the TPX magazines, are kind of strange. Really hard to find something that fits. The DMAG as well, they are odd size. The TMC is a nice one because it's practically an AR magazine of the size, so most of those pouches will fit. I'm not gonna guarantee all of them, but a lot of them do. Same for the T15. And one thing to point out with the T15 is that it did have a button right here, the door. The door can be activated by pushing it in your pouch. That's kinda, I think it's kinda stupid. But I have to be honest with myself. There is a possibility that the P90 magazine still can have that problem because the door is sticking out a little bit, so it's good theoretically catch it on the fabric a little bit and drag it back, but it's a lot harder to do than just pushing and then floop, you lose all your paint. Or at least because it's upside down you will lose some, it's kind of a mess. I don't know much about the Sort Of magazine, but the Sort Of magazine have the same thing that I mentioned before. Like if you press this, poof, the MAG jumps out. So you can imagine when there is paint inside, the paint will fall out when this is pressed. Meaning when you have magazines like that, you need something in your pouch to prevent that button to be pressed. And those things are being made in the 3D printing community. So that is of course a solution, and if this is your platform, you can work around that. But it's kind of strange. Like if you can prevent it as a designer, why do you not prevent it? You know, that's why, let's say, the spring release button is kind of stuck inside of the magazine. You can still activate it by hand if you need to do that. Let's say if you wind up the magazine. Also something like with the TPX magazine, you can clearly see how many rounds you have left inside. Probably not so clear on this sentence, but then the drawback of something like this is it's open. So if you have, let's say, the Tipman 98 adapter, then it's all sticking out like this, and it's when it's raining or dust, it can get in. So that's by the first prototype that I made was open, and then later, I don't know why precisely, because it was still a prototype, I already closed it. Oh, I know, I remember. I tried to use translucent plastic and make a window that way, so it's closed, and that did not work out. But anyway, that was when it was kind of getting closed again. But the benefit of the window thing is, and there are a few more magazines that can be modeled to be like that, or let's say are translucent so you can see a little bit. But that's important that it's closed, otherwise they will be getting dirt inside, and That's not a good thing when you are paintballing, especially with the rain. With the TPX it can be kind of forgiven. When with the normal TPX this will be covered with your grip or in a pouch most of the time. So it's not that bad, but when you are using it in a different adapter, that you can also argue, yeah, okay, it's not designed around that adapter, of course. But then you can get some issues with dust getting inside. I also have the DMAG Helix magazines, but those are all dead right now because I used the springs to make the P90 magazines. But they're already kind of worn down anyway. So, but those have also the feature like you can open them toollessly. But the thing is with those, and it is kind of the same with the TMC magazine. But TMC uses some tools. They do have a nice feature that you can open this, only this bolt, and you can open this one up, and then you can take a barrel strap like this inside of the magazine without having to worry about the small parts right here. That's what I wanted to mention with the Helix MAGS is as well. If you would open them all up, you have to worry about all the small parts fitting the right way, and it's not too bad, and especially when you do it at the right location, let's say on a table with some things that cannot slide off, but there are small springs involved, things like that. And that's the same with the Helix MAGS when you do that. So some people, it was kind of hype back then, like toolless design, toolless, but then there's still, is it easy? Are easy components you're working with? We don't talk about that, it's toolless, and there's something to be said because threading in plastic it will wear out, things like that. But with TMC there are quite big threads. I think they will hold up, and you do it, with care, thread it out and in, and you don't have to open it up every time. I think it will hold out quite a lot for a long time, but there's something to be said for that. With toolless, especially if it's this simple, like with the die magazine, just sliding this door, you don't really wear something out by that. But there are small components you have to worry about. The thing I can say about this magazine is if you would open up this, then you get basically the same as with the TMC magazine. You can see the spring, you can pull it out or wind it up before and put a barrel strap in it like that. You don't have to worry about the thing. But I do have to say, I use really tiny screws. Otherwise I could not have done this pretty much. That's the fact. So you really have to put pressure on those heads, otherwise you'll strip them out. And it's really in thin canals and things like that. You may lose them. So that's something to keep in mind. It's not really meant to take apart a lot of times. Let's say the TMC magazine is way sturdy in that regard. It's not meant to do that, because otherwise, if you start to imagine if this part gets really a bit loose because of it's been taken out a few times, or this part, you will hinge the magazine on this part, so it needs to be really sturdy. Same with the back, it will be locked on the back. So if those parts are not tighten enough and are really loose, things like that, also the magazine gets a little bit too big, you may not want to fit in. But also, because the weight locks in, I think then at that point you really start to demolish your magazine. In comparison with this, of course, so long the shells are clamped, you do it this motion, so you don't worry about this part so much, long it stays on there. It's a little bit less of a bad situation, let's say, than if you would not have this fully, if you start to stripping out the threads, let's call it that way. But the thing is, if you do have to remove this part, you don't have to worry about the winding mechanism, spring getting flying away, and the pin that's sitting right here. The only thing really that's kind of annoying maybe it's the sliding door, and you got the spring, there's a loose spring behind it, and when you lift it up it may want to kind of jump on you, so keep your hand there that you can kind of catch it when you do that. At that point you got the main spring with the window. In a lot of cases that will be, especially when you put your finger on it, will be one part that you can lift out. So you lift out the top of the head and the main spring. So then this main body is just empty, and you can do what you want with it. Put it in water, put a brush and a barrel swap through it or something like that to clean it. But do keep in mind this piece, of course, that's a loose piece. But even that can happen, that the main spring kind of gets loose from the MAG head. So you have, let's say, the MAG head, the main spring and its window. Then still the catching part that will be catching the wheel, it will stay in the MAG head fine. That will not get out. You really need to put some work in to get that removed. So if there is some dirt there, something like that, and you really want to get there again, you just have to use the tool right here to remove it and push this pin out, things like that. So there's not like you have to worry about those things. That's kind of a nice thing about it, but then again, because of the small screws, I cannot really say like, oh, it's better than all the other ones. No, it's really something that can be considered a downside to the magazine. No, it's a limitation because the walls are so thin right here. That's also why this is the original. It's really, let's say, the closest to the P90 magazine that you can kind of get without, breaking it by having this an open thing. That's why there is not really a shape here that you put your finger, and it's kind of, I cheated a little bit by making a line right here that you can kind of grab the magazine. But that's the reason why I make also a reinforced edition. They got a line right here in the middle. That's just to make it a little bit more thicker, because it's getting really, really thin to the point that you can see that it kind of gets open a bit. But surprisingly strong still, because the way how it's kind of bolted together, let's say, with the threads, with the screws, it's fine. It's not like when you put it in your marker, it's like, oh, I start to bend this or something like that. And it's only really thin at this line. Besides that, it's getting already thicker, so even with a paintball would hit it, would be really, let's say even BB from airsoft would hit it, then it probably would be damaging because it's really tiny and rigid. But a paintball is more bigger, it will disperse the force more on the sides, but only time can tell if that really is an issue, and also it depends on the materials you're using. But it was something that and especially when I wanted to go back to the open window part, I really have it open with a separate material as the window. I really needed to think about, okay, I need to reinforce this, otherwise I cannot do that. Then you got this part that's really thin, or in other words open, and then this sides is also really thin, so this corner will be bending at one point in time, when something hits it will crack, and it will just a hinge that's hinging on those two screws right here. That would not work, but for now it looks to be strong enough. Only time will tell. But so in short, and also this magazine you can speed feed. You can just put an adapter on your electric loader, just slide it on there, and it will feed it without any problems. There's also something that the TMC magazine can do pretty well. Also about feeding, this magazine is really meant to fit on top of a mark. It's not meant to be underneath or on the sides. So in that regard, you got limitations where you can use this magazine for. Also, something that I did not even think about at this point. This is only for round ball. So where, let's say, the 12 round magazine from Tipman, it's kind of the same size. Yeah, okay, this can shoot first strike. So if that is really important for you, of course. This magazine, I see that never happen that this gonna be shooting first strike. It's a crazy tight turn. I don't think I've not. No, and then you have to make this turn in the back. So besides this really tight turn right here, they got a crazy short turn right here to get it to the middle part instead of from the side. And you have no support from the mag head pushing on the first strike when it's in the, let's say, the feed neck chamber. And there I say it again, it feeds to a feed neck. That's not a D-shaped thing on any markers. So even if I would make, let's say, my own marker body with a D-shaped feed neck, no, it is really not going to happen. Then it would need so much work. Because the entire reason why I can fit so much inside of it is that the mag head is really basic. It's just a half circle with a cone-shaped point. So the spring is not. Yeah, it helps with the compression of the spring when you're winding it up, especially with the turn. But besides that, it's really simple. It's not like the TPX that they got a separate piece inside of the mag head, and some other magazines do that as well. But I think it's mainly the TPX, to be honest. The DMAG have also kind of a strange bump on the top of the mag head, but this is really flat, so you can fit as much as possible in there. And it's also with the winding, if you're gonna do a competition, if it's faster to wind this one up compared to this one will really lose. Besides the point that you have to wind a bigger distance, let's say for 8 balls more, it's a really small spool you're winding up. So you need to make more turns for the same amount of pullback of the spring, let's say. So there's definitely some drawbacks for making it that small. I could put the spool right here and let's say let it feed at a different angle and then say, okay, you have to only turn it 2 times, and then it's already. But then you need to sacrifice some space from what's important. Is it the winding time, or is it the amount of paint you can fit inside, and the shape? Are we going to make it bigger so it can be toolless and really in a nice way, and it can have a nice feature with the door closing and things like that, and still stay really sturdy and feel sturdy material, not like a shampoo bottle thing. And there are some choices you need to make when you're making a magazine. But yeah, that was something with the feeding down angle thing. That's something that I want to mention. So that will, because some people in the beginning were already saying like, can it fit on a Tipman and things like that. The thing with this platform is in order to lock it, you really need a front piece, let's say a hook, to hook it in the front, and then it will click in the back. So if you would make a magazine adapter for this one, it needs to be really big. So if you make let's say an universal adapter, it would have the feed neck right here, so all the way in the back, and all this space going forward for this magazine to lock. So making that 3D printed, basically these parts can be 3D printed still, but then the let's say the rail, the fake rail, and the feed neck needs to be from some type of metal, otherwise you're gonna smash it in there and put it back there. all that force, I gonna guarantee you it's gonna break. And then it's not reliable. Why do you want it? And besides that, because this entire mounting system needs to be underneath there and or sitting on top of a feed neck, it will be looking crazy tall. So some people are finding the, let's say, my brand gun style magazine adapter kind of crazy and tall, but it kind of in some regards it kind of would look like that. You know, it's kind of tall and then in that case really long. I think it would not look right, but we can see maybe in the future there will be somebody say like, oh, I can make that metal adapter, things like that. Then sure, contact me, or I find something. But that's the thing. It's kind of limited to the platform, the markers where it can go on. For now, and it was original really the plan to be that exclusive, but let's say the Planted clips with their rail kits, it kind of fits that really nice because you got the feed neck right in the middle, you got the rail kit where you can mount and slide the parts on, and then you got a sturdy platform to put the 3D printed parts on, so it's nice and secure. But yeah, then you got a lot of different market platforms. They got maybe still on rail, but then their feed neck is more on the sides, things like that. But I have not really investigated. I'm already happy that I finally finished this part. So that's maybe future talk. But what I want to say with it, a lot of different magazines are way more easy. And they got the challenge as well, but they are more easy to kinda, if you are ready to make some compromise to stick it to the side or on the top, or to make an adapter for it that will work on different platforms. But this, yeah, it got this shape that it needs to go forward. You can technically put it backwards as well, but it's kind of not designed to do that. But you can technically put it backwards and then put it forward. Have the mag release that you need to push forward to lock it out. But then of course you don't want to use this thing, then probably something without the reel on top, and you can still have a very easy thing to aim, to put it back in there and then lock it forward. But yeah, that was something that would be needed if you were to put it on a Tipman 98, and that would be kind of side mounted, so it's not for everybody. It's always people say like, yeah, I wouldn't mind it, and then they see it and they do mind it maybe, or some people don't care. It is always something. But I think I kind of covered it all. It got the 28 capacity. That's kind of nice compared to most of the magazines out there. I think that, let's say that the First Strike got also a 30 round magazine that continues. Of course, that's more than this one, but it's quite a big magazine. I've seen it in the distance at the stand when it was just released, and it's kind of big magazine. But it's cool that's possible, of course. And it can do things that this one can't. It probably can shoot first strikes this one can't, and it works on the platform that it's made for, that this one can't. It's really made for a different platform. Yeah, but I think I really covered everything. Otherwise, I'm gonna just repeat myself, and I have a habit to do that. But you can. It's especially, I think, nice for those who want to have bullpup projects. That can be a nice thing. But at the same time, even if this would be fake, let's say, and you have to put the magazines right here, I wouldn't mind if it would be bullpup and shoots nice. And why not? You know, I'm not. It's paintball, so realistic things are not so. Doesn't matter. The distance, you don't see that it's fat from the bottom instead of the top, and it's already nice. That on its own is already nice. It's got a bullpup platform for yeah, the Planted clips line now, and it's still pleasant to shoot. That was also a big surprise for me because when I did this Tipman 98, quite some time ago, let's say 10 years ago. It was really ear destroying. It was really, because the power tube is right here, and you're laying your ear on that. Oh, and it was so, you really need ear protection to do that, and sometimes I was forgetting it, and I was really shooting like this because I did not want to have my ear close to it, and then it was kind of bearable to do it, and I was like, okay, do I still not get him? But with this one, and this is not exactly the most quiet marker of them, but still, with the ETA 1, it's still doable. I don't really have an issue with it. If you compare that with EMF 100, that's crazy silent. That is really doable for this type of work, let's say, to make it a build-up. A thing that I was forgot to mention is like when you're pulling the spring back, and then later in the game, or the end of the game, you want to release the spring. A lot of, at least pretty much all magazines don't like that when you do that with an empty magazine, because it's got a lot of spring tension. It will release without any resistance, and to smash against the end of the magazine, so the magazine head. In the case of this magazine, it doesn't really seem to be that big of an issue, but still, I would suggest to try to avoid it as much as possible. So when you got paint inside of the magazine, kind of open the door and release the spring button, so it can kind of go and pushing the paint out at the same time, so it's nice and gentle. But to be honest, because I was prototyping and things like that, I've done it quite a lot of times. I think also it helps because of the tight bend, it kind of slows the entire spring down. And the difference also with this magazine, of course, it doesn't really push something really out. It stays inside the spring. It's not really a system that needs to be really delicate and things to push something in the chamber. So it's a lot simpler, and for that reason also stronger. But again, like with all the magazines, you don't really want to do that and make that a habit. So if you can kind of avoid it. But again, with a tight turn, I think it's for what at least I've seen, not really yet a problem. If you do something with like a Zeta MAG and let spring, especially when it's a straight spring design, it just have nothing to slow down against, then it hits the mag door and then something will break. And in the Zeta MAG case, it can break the mag head. That happened with me in the past. And with some other magazines, you can imagine also it's a lot of force. They usually have something like a wheel system inside to guide the mag head, and those pins will be hitting the end of those wheels really hard, or they will be hitting the mag door really hard. So what I usually do, if I don't do the trick with the paint inside, I don't have any paint left inside, I'd maybe take a little bit of a microfiber inside and then let the spring go so it hits the fabric. That does also cushion the blow a little bit. So there are some tricks around it, like putting a barrel swap in the magazine and just hold that very loose so it can kind of push that barrel swap a little bit out, so it also slows it down. So there are some ways to go around it when your magazine is already empty, because sometimes I borrow magazines and they are really in a way nice to clean out, take out all the paint out of the magazine, but then I got a magazine that's on tension without any paint inside, and then good luck getting that spring not flying out without damaging the magazine. But then again, if that happens, you got some tricks. I figured out some tricks to work around it. So microfiber, barrel swap, things like that. But yeah, you can still do the microfiber trick. Barrel swap will not work because it's too much of a bend. With a microfiber, put it a little bit in there. Sometimes I do put my finger inside of a magazine, but it's really painful. So don't do that. Just take a microfiber, something like that. Put it inside. If you're really gentle, want to be careful with your magazines, that it kind of hits that, kind of soften the blow, let's say. But yeah, that was something I want to mention. So it should not be that big of a deal with this magazine, just the way this type of magazine works. But yeah, see you guys next time. I hope this was kind of useful video, not a waste of time for you guys to listen to. But then I hope it kind of gives you what to expect without having to view the video how to assemble the magazine. It's more about a user perspective. You can kind of expect the do and don'ts, I guess, and what it can and cannot do. So you not somebody's overhyping it and you are expecting this to shoot gold and things like that, and auto aim, and I know what the fantasies can be sometimes with people, but they can be crazy and wild. But there are some limitations with it, with everything. But yeah, I hope that this video kind of clears it up and gives some kind of a clear view what this can and cannot do. So yeah, see you guys next time.